Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I'm Kayla Wilkens. I'm the manager of the Small Business Resource Center with the Vegas Chamber. Thank you all for joining us for today for our very first webinar in the Small Business Resource Center programming series. Our goal with this new initiative is to provide our chamber members and our local entrepreneurs tools, connections, and insights like cybersecurity insights today to help your businesses thrive. And I really think today's topic could not be more relevant given everything that's going on today. We're kicking things off today with a session on protecting your business in an age of smarter, faster cyber attacks. And I want to introduce Rob, the Chief Security Officer at Intelligent Technical Solutions. He's a fantastic speaker, expert in cybersecurity, and we're thrilled to have him with us today.
Well, great to be here. Look forward to the conversation.
And I'm Matt. I'm local here in Las Vegas since 1991. I've worked for Intelligent Technical Solutions for 11 years, and we'll be hosting it. And appreciate Kayla and everybody at the Vegas Chamber for giving us this time. Our conversation today, the State of Cybersecurity 2025, is a conversation meant to explore what businesses should keep in mind as they try to protect their data, their clients, and ultimately their finances. We at Intelligent Technical Solutions specializes in helping small and medium businesses thrive by managing and securing technology. A few housekeeping notes. Our conversation is going to be around 30 to 40 minutes. We'll stick around longer at the end to answer any questions. We will record this, so if you'd like to review some of the information later at your convenience, let us know. And then we're also going to take questions during the webinar. We would like to make this as collaborative as possible. We'll have some time, as I mentioned, for Q&A at the end. Our hope for this webinar is to a couple things. We want to be invited back to do more webinars because cybersecurity is a very broad topic. We hope to continue the discussion with you at another video meeting at your business. And we're also going to do a raffle for anybody that meets with us till the end of the month, for anybody that sits with us. And we'll talk about it at the end. But a hint, it'll be for a Yeti cooler. Okay, so Rob, let's get started. State of Cybersecurity 2025. Cybersecurity today, it seems like you just see this topic so much in the news, the latest cyber incident. How big of a problem is this really, Rob?
Well, it seems like at this point you can't turn on the news without hearing about the latest cyber attack. So this is something that's impacting businesses of all sizes. This is something that's becoming more impactful in terms of, damage that a business can suffer. The frequency is increasing, the level of damage is increasing, and we're at a point now where businesses really need to start kind of rethinking how they approach cybersecurity. It's become such a large issue that, interestingly enough, if you think about the largest economies in the world, cybercrime is now the third largest economy in terms of GDP after the United States and China. The business size doesn't matter either. We're seeing businesses as small as 1 or 2 people getting hit, all the way up to large companies, large corporations, government institutions as well. The attacks are getting more impactful. They're happening quicker. And we're seeing just the level of impact really dramatically increase. So this is something that everyone just needs to be kind of heads up and batten down the hatches at this point, given the level of impact that we're seeing globally.
So, you mentioned we're going to talk about the financial impact that we're seeing. Can you kind of walk through the stats that we're looking at here?
Yeah, so the average breach, this has gone up dramatically over the past year. We're seeing the average breach costs, going in, it's a couple $1 million here. So if you think about this is kind of an average across small and medium-sized businesses. There's a couple of components to this. So there's a company being down for, on average at this point, roughly around 16 days if they have a major breach. So if you think about that, if you just maybe like as a kind of brushstroke here, if you take your monthly revenue as an organization, and if you're down for 16 business days, that amount, let's say you make $1 million a month, you're down 16 days, your business is just off the top, just lost $550,000. And that's only just one piece of the pie here. You're also looking at forensic costs and cyber insurance costs. You're looking at potentially new hardware that you have to get and procure in order to even restore to something. You're talking about reputational damage. You're talking about client loss. You're talking about staff attrition. You're talking about reputational damage that really can be really dramatically impactful to a business. We're seeing a large percentage of businesses go out of business after having this type of an incident occur, and largely because there's a lot of lack of preparedness in place. So we're seeing, like, if there's a major breach, 60% of businesses are going out of business within about 18 months. So it's pretty dramatic. So many businesses are underprepared. A lot of businesses don't have cyber insurance. They don't have an incident response plan. Just what would be the steps that we would do in order to recover if we were to have an incident? So these are the kinds of things that businesses now need to start kind of thinking about, making sure they have the right levels of protections. We'll go through about what that looks like. And we'll talk through, what is a good posture that businesses really need to think about these days in order to protect themselves.
So I appreciate that. I want to talk about why there's been such a dramatic increase. Why is this happening?
Well, a lot of this is largely pandemic driven. So if you think about over like pre-pandemic, how most businesses were set up in terms of their technology, they largely would have some sort of backup solution of some kind. They'll have some sort of virus protection. They'll have some sort of firewall protection. They'll have some sort of spam filter. And typically, most businesses will have some level of what we call multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication. And that's where you get maybe a text to your phone if you're logging into your bank, or maybe you have that kind of like an authenticator app on your phone, and you go ahead and click approve to get into a particular system or account. Most businesses were set up in that way, and that largely met the threat. But what we've seen since the pandemic is that there's some large trends have occurred. So one of those trends has been a move towards remote work. So the boundaries of typical business has now extended to people's homes. We've seen a large move towards personal devices being used to access corporate data, corporate business applications, and so forth. And we've also seen a large adoption of kind of cloud applications. So this would be things like Office 365 or Zoom. We all lived on Zoom in those couple, year or two after the pandemic. And this migration and these large macro changes have effectively expanded and extended the boundaries of a typical business's network. And if you think about how protected a typical end user's home is, at least from a cybersecurity perspective, typically pretty underprotected and pretty loose. Wouldn't be too complicated to get into most home networks. And so what we've seen is that these trends have just caused this really dramatic increase in cyber attacks. So we've seen this expanded surface area or this attack risk area that a lot of businesses have now been attacked through. And so a lot of businesses are being frankly overrun by this expansion of risk and exposure.
Can I ask you a question for clarification on what you just
Sure.
said? You
Yeah.
said homes are typically underprotected. So pre-COVID, right? You would be on your home computer and you're just working on your home stuff. Maybe you're playing video games or you're watching YouTube or just doing personal business of your own home. And then after the pandemic, people were working from home. And is that where, because they are, porting in, remoting into their company, is that where the door opened for cybercrime?
That's one of the vectors that threat actors have taken advantage of. Because if you think about it, most people were in the office, right? And so they were in this walled garden, right? And as soon as you start kind of working from home, you're kind of relying on remote technologies like, probably heard the term VPN, virtual private network, and that's just again a mechanism that an end user that's remote, a teleworker, would leverage that system in order to gain access to internal data and internal applications. And so we've seen just this, just very steady drive and expansion. And a lot of businesses just haven't been prepared to deal with the level of attack that we've seen. It's been very sustained and just increasing in frequency and impact.
So,
So,
with all that said, how do we lower the risk, the collective risk, based on the things you've been telling us are some of the problems?
well, I think basically, I think the mindset has to shift a little bit. So if you think about how you maybe a good analogy is how you protect a home. Use this as a starting place. So if you think about this for a second, if I'm trying to protect my home and I'm trying to protect my home from a thief, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to have kind of layers of protection. So I'm going to have uh, locks on the doors. I'm going to have locks on the windows. I'm going to have a uh, barking dog. I'm going to have a fence around my property. I'm going to have maybe some alarm system or video surveillance system. I'm going to have the alarm, company that I work with driving around the neighborhood, kind of like neighborhood watch, right? I'm going to have these, we call this like defense in depth or layered defense. The same analogy would apply for a business network. So I would go ahead and have differing layers of cybersecurity protection. So if a threat actor or a hacker gets past one particular defense, they're going to get blocked by something else. And so kind of having this kind of mindset in place, I think will overall, once the proper investments are made, the overall risk and exposure is going to drop pretty significantly. And this is, I think a good methodology that folks can start to kind of think through in order to better protect their computing and data assets and so forth in their businesses.
So let's talk about the current types of threat that we're seeing out in the world. Can you go through some of the most common threats?
So we're seeing three major vectors or three major types of threats. So the first one is what we call phishing. So phishing is where someone maybe gets a deceptive email and they're going to go ahead and it looks really enticing. Maybe it has a level of urgency to it. Someone clicks on that. They get often shuttered over to a login page. It looks authentic. It looks like something that you need to go ahead. Maybe it's a request to reset a password or to access a particular system, things like that. And folks will go ahead and pop in their username and their password, but it's malicious. It's deceptive. It's actually the threat actor or the hacker that's going ahead and essentially kind of sucking out or harvesting those credentials and those the password, username, and password. And once they have that, you've effectively kind of given away your credentials. And at that point, the hacker can then go ahead and do other types of things. They are now you effectively. And so now they can go ahead and log into the systems that you just granted them access to because you just handed over your password and your username. And they can now go ahead and access that system that you gave them, you gave to them. So we're seeing that a lot. And then if you think about all the attacks that we're seeing, 90% of them usually typically start with phishing. So this is a very kind of like the first type of infiltration or compromise that we often see. The next thing that we'll see often is what we call ransomware. So ransomware is where you click on a piece of malicious or bad program of some sort, or some code, and you click on an application, you click on a link, and something gets installed on your system. And then what gets installed on your system is malicious. And what it tries to do is it tries to basically encrypt your computer. And so you're basically going to see when you click on one of these things, a couple things are happening. One is that it's trying to spread across to other computers. So on a network, this is a very easy way for an entire network to get compromised. Someone clicks on one thing, it goes ahead and executes. It goes ahead and encrypts that particular machine, locks it so you can't do any work. You get a big, scary screen that shows up on your monitor. And at that point, you're locked out. You can't really do anything. Network is down, computer is down. And then it's trying to go ahead and replicate across to other machines. And then effectively, at the end of the day, all your machines get encrypted. And at that point, your business is kind of at a standstill, and then you have to respond to that. And then that's where you start getting into threat actors and hackers that are trying to, extort you, effectively say, hey, you know what, you need to pay this ransom to go ahead and, get this key that'll unlock the code that's going to go ahead and bring your systems back up and running, right? And again, you're dealing with a malicious threat actor who's very unscrupulous, and that in itself is a whole other realm of experience that, as having gone through that and helped many businesses through that, this often is really very one of the most challenging and difficult days for many business owners, and not one that I wish on anybody. It's super stressful. It's often referred to by them, if you would actually talk to some of those folks that have gone through this, one of the worst days of their lives. And it's just not something you want to see happen. The third way that we see a lot of, third type of threat that we see often is what we call business email compromise. And so what happens here is that someone gains access to an email account within your network. They're able at that point to go ahead and monitor that email. They're going ahead and using this as a method to see, oh, okay, let's see what role this person is. Maybe you've been targeted. Maybe they're targeting someone in accounting or someone in HR, somebody that has access to more confidential information. And what they're doing is they're monitoring that email. They're looking to see who you're communicating with, how you communicate. And they're going to go ahead and send out emails to maybe a list of clients that you have. And you're going to say something to the effect of, oh, here's our invoice for this month. Oh, by the way, we happen to change our bank account information. So if you can please go ahead and change that and then go ahead and pay our latest invoice. And then what ends up happening is down the road, maybe a month later or something, you're doing your accounts receivable reconciliation and you're thinking, hey, so-and-so client, he usually pays by now. I haven't received it. What's going on here? You call that client, hey, just following up on that invoice. And they're like, oh, we paid that 3 weeks ago. Oh, that's interesting. We haven't received payment. Oh, yeah. I got this email that said to go ahead and change the bank account. We paid this other bank account. Uh-oh, clue. Okay, we have a problem now. And that's what we call a business email compromise. Effectively, it's like a misredirection of financial money. Effectively, it's being misdirected to the hacker instead of to your business. And we're seeing more and more of this kind of thing. And this is another area where many businesses don't have visibility into email compromises, and they don't have enough time to see. And then basically what ends up happening is the path that I described earlier ends up happening, and just unfortunately a frequent occurrence these days.
What does a hacker do when it gains access though? Like when they're in there, what do they actually do?
Well, if I'm a threat actor and I gain access to your network, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to investigate and see what you have access to. I'm going to look for any information that has, personally identified information, anything that's maybe you're a regulated industry, maybe you're like a hospital or something, and I'm going to go ahead and pull out some patient records. I want to kind of suck that out of the network, which I'm going to go ahead and use as leverage when I go ahead and ransomware your environment. So effectively what they're trying to do is, hey, I want to do some reconnaissance. I want to do some discovery. I want to see what's available here. What is some great information that I can go ahead and use against you? I'm going to go ahead and try and gain access to other accounts. I'm going to try and what we call elevate or escalate our privilege, where I can go ahead and basically try to get myself to a point where I'm an administrator in your network. If I can be an administrator in your network, then I can do a whole series of other things. I can go ahead and delete backups. I can monitor your email. I can go ahead and suck data out of the network that I'm going to use to extort you. I'm going to go ahead and make your lives much more difficult. And then that's typically, once I have that, I basically own you. I own your network. I own your data, and you're kind of at my beck and call. And you're going to have to deal with whatever demands I put upon you.
Wow.
So not great.
So let's talk about maybe a real world phishing scenario that maybe you've addressed. Can you walk us through something?
Yeah, so we talk about what we often hear is, oh, well, I don't have any information that anybody really cares about. I'm too small. Nobody cares about what I have. I'm fine with what I got. And like I mentioned earlier, it really doesn't matter what the size of the business is. So we had a company come to us in the middle of a crisis. and they're a small 6-person CPA firm. And what happened in this case is one of the principals at this CPA firm got phished. And so the bad actor hacker was able to access this partner's information. And as a CPA firm, what do they do? Well, they make their money by going ahead and interacting with the IRS, going ahead and handling business returns, tax refund requests for individuals and for businesses. And what had happened was the threat actor and hacker basically started submitting fraudulent tax returns to the IRS. In fact, they had submitted 185 fraudulent tax returns to the IRS. The IRS eventually caught wind of this and then went ahead and blacklisted the company from interacting with the IRS until this got cleaned up. So you can imagine what this would be like for a small CPA firm, if you're making your money going ahead and transacting with the IRS, if you're no longer able to do so. And so we had to go and clean that up. And it took this company basically about a year and a half to get out from under this because there was a lot of reputational damage that occurred. They lost a lot of clients' trust, and they basically had to start to go ahead and effectively create new business in order to kind of get out from under this. And a lot of it just stemmed from someone not protecting their account properly, and it just started from that. So
How do you quantify an impact up to a CPA firm if they can't access the IRS? I mean, can you quantify that?
well, I mean, if you look at again, it goes back to what's their monthly revenue as a business, and if you're no longer able to go ahead and transact and go ahead and do work for clients and do that, that's going to cause a large financial impact to the business. So this, from their standpoint, this became something that was pretty dramatically impactful, and they had to do a lot of unwinding, a lot of new kind of marketing and so forth to gain new clients. And then for the ones that they were able to keep, demonstrate that they were starting to do the right things, and a lot of deep apologies, which, for businesses, again, it's better just to avoid that type of situation from occurring.
Can you talk through this one, the ransomware of a whole city of Oakland, not a small city? We've taken some of their teams.
Yeah, so I'm based in the Bay Area. So this is something that actually I live in Oakland, and this is something that occurred to me about a year and a half ago. So as a resident of Oakland, they had a ransomware attack that basically also, as I mentioned earlier, kind of started, surprisingly, from a phishing email. And in this case, the city got compromised, and city services went down for, I think, almost 4 weeks. All city services were down except for 911. So if you wanted to go check, property tax or submit any tax payments or any sort of interaction that you had with the city, just all the systems are just effectively down. And this affected phone systems, contracting, tax licenses, permitting, parking, tax payments, all that just down for multiple weeks. What was interesting about this, though, was the threat actors came to the city of Oakland and basically said, hey, we have sucked out information of your city employees out of the network, and we want you guys to go ahead and pay the ransom. The city of Oakland decided, no, we're not going to pay that. We're comfortable in the level of protections that we have in place, and we're going to be able to restore city services. Unfortunately, they didn't quite have it all together. And so what ended up happening was the threat actors actually went and published online the complete list of all the city employees, and included all their personal information, cell phones, credit information, et cetera. And that went all the way up into actually the current mayor and then the previous mayor as well. So this is often what we see when we say kind of double extortion in terms of ransomware. This is where we see where the information is getting sucked out of the network and that's being used as leverage. And they call double extortion kind of a ransomware attack. So we see this. Yeah, so you see this
Can
pretty
I
frequently.
can I talk about our ransomware? You're talking about Oakland.
Sure.
I'm looking at the chat here. Did anyone want to talk about what happened in Las Vegas? Really, the state of Nevada. I'm looking at the chat to see if I can see anything. I don't know if I'm even looking at the right chat. I think I am, but no one said anything yet. It says webinar chat. Can anybody type in the chat? We're the biggest, most famous, more or less. Oh wait, let me look here. breach happened in Las Vegas. No one writes anything. I'll say it, but
Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
it's the DMV. Our DMV just got hacked about a month-ish ago. I know this because I tell the story. I gave my nephew a car that I didn't want anymore. It was an old car, and being in his mid-20s, he didn't take the license plate off, and so I got nervous that he was driving around with a car that was under my name. So I called the DMV lady and said, "How do I get this done? Do I have to go rip the plate off?" And she said, "No, you can just log into DMV and you can just delete it off your account," which was so convenient. And I went to go log in, and it said breached. And I don't know if anybody here knows, but a large amount of city uh, website access was breached. Now, I haven't seen, Rob, what happened. They said it was a network issue, but I've known Las Vegas to not be very forthcoming about breaches. We still don't know what happened with the MGM breach. We know they got a lot of money, but we don't know how much, or if all the employees were hacked. But my point is, the DMV was down for 3 or 4 weeks, and that caused car dealership problems. It caused people problems, and people going on trips couldn't go get their appointments. So I can't imagine the ripples it had. So I'll get off my complaints about the DMV. I'll let you get back to talking about business email compromise. And can you just walk us through how this typically works?
Yeah, so I kind of have alluded to it a little bit earlier. So someone gets access to a compromised account. They're able to monitor the email. They're able to see who's being emailed and what the communications are like. Hey, are you going out on vacation? Is there a big project coming up? Is there a big deliverable that's due? And they're using that kind of timing and that information to go ahead and craft the most kind of impactful situation to make things really difficult for you. So oftentimes they'll go ahead and, again, change bank account information, send out in a mass emails. They'll go ahead and message your customer list. They'll go ahead and see when you're going to be on vacation, and go ahead and send a very urgent request to your maybe assistant requiring some sort of purchase of some sort. And they're going to go ahead and kind of leverage that situation for maximum impact for financial gain.
Um, I I I wanted to know if it's okay if I talk about a story with uh a an a city that we work with. Can I talk about that?
Sure.
So there's a city that Intelligent Technical Solutions worked with, and they got a very massive breach. Now, this was before COVID, and this was before a lot of the remote work was happening. So it was starting to ramp up cybercrime, but it wasn't as much rampant as it was COVID. It was probably 3 years before COVID. And they got breached. And really, they got breached through an email compromise, but they also got breached because, and again, you're the security expert, Rob, but they got breached because they didn't want to use multi-factor authentication, which basically says, are you who you are using your computer where you typically use it? And if you do, it's pretty much a background application. But if you move around, like if you move your house, or you're somehow in Russia, it wants to know using that app, hey, are you who you say you are? So the head leadership in this town was very reluctant to use MFA, and they did not. And then they got breached through a business compromise, and they got breached for $650,000. Now, this was before cyber insurance got really, really heavy in denying claims, because it wasn't that rampant yet. And we worked hard, and we did get them their money back. We would have not been able to do that now, because cyber insurance is so much tighter now. But then we got them their money back. The interesting part of the story, Rob, is that we went back to them after we gave them their money back and said, okay, guys, do you want to we need to get you back on MFA. And they went, no, we don't want to use it, because they don't like change. And we
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I mean, this is an area where we got to continue kind of educating folks and letting them know they know the dangers, understand, the impact of not doing it. And, money typically talks. People, if you lose a lot of money, typically it's going to change some behaviors and change some.
I'm sure they are on it now, but at the
Yeah.
time they were still reluctant even after we got the money back.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes.
So, Rob, hackers are getting all this identity data. You use the word harvest. What do they do with all of our, you're saying how they got in the city of Oakland and they published it. I mean, other than embarrassing everybody, what do they do with it?
Well, there's this thing called the dark web. The dark web, think of it as the internet black market. So it's kind of the internet underground. This is where hackers and threat actors are basically collating, buying, selling, trading credentials, username, passwords, social security numbers, credit card information, anything that's of value, access to networks, access to corporations. They're going ahead and selling this kind of information on the dark web. And so what ends up happening is like there's all this phishing is happening, and folks are kind of handing over credentials unknowingly, unwittingly. And the threat actors are collating all this stuff and putting it into the dark web. And that's where it's bought, sold, and traded. And so what's happening is it's very helpful to understand, and the dark web can be monitored. So we can go ahead, there's, scans and related tests that can be run that will go ahead and look for corporate information, corporate data that's resident on the dark web. And the sooner that a company knows about it, gives them the information to go ahead and change those settings, change those accounts, and basically prevent more and unfortunate things from happening to that business. So this is a very common thing that we see. A lot of information ends up on the dark web. And then here's the other thing: we'll also see, large commercial websites, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. They've had data breaches. Credit card companies, credit bureaus. They've had these large scale breaches where large swaths of information are being published online, available on the dark web, and people's information and identities are very easily stolen, and information can be leveraged against people. So being able to kind of monitor this on a regular basis and in real time provides companies with awareness that they can go ahead and use to go ahead and prevent and change passwords, change credentials, and just be aware that that their secrets are effectively available in a, online forum. So this is what we call a dark web. So having visibility into the dark web and, being notified if your stuff is there is super helpful to go ahead and prevent these larger scale attacks from happening.
So, how quickly can a company get compromised? I'd like to kind of understand the window.
Yeah, well, we're seeing a lot of change here. So 3 years ago, you would see a typical compromise. A threat actor would basically be inside a network, usually about 6 to 9 months before going ahead and actually putting down ransomware in an environment. Now, if you think there's a lot of steps that need to happen before a hacker can go ahead and decimate a network. So they have to gain a foothold, right? They have to get their paws in. They have to go ahead and see if they can move laterally. They need to go ahead and see if they can get to administrator level. They need to go ahead and monitor things for a while. Hey, where's information stored? All these kind of various kind of phases or milestones that they have to go through. They have to gain access to a method to basically just distribute this across the network, this malicious kind of software. And it typically would take them about 6 to 9 months to do this a couple years ago. Now we've seen 2 years ago, 2 to 3 months. They're getting faster. Well, guess what? A year ago, if you remember the MGM Grand attacks that happened about a year and a half ago, they were inside that network for a little bit less than a week. Now, the latest numbers are as quick as 17 hours. So if you think about that from a business's perspective, if you don't have any visibility and you don't know if someone's in your stuff, and it takes them at this point 17 hours to, once they get in, to go ahead and wallop you, you're potentially in a world of hurt. So being able to detect these things in real time is really where businesses need to be these days. So being able to, it's not a question of if, it's really when. And so now I want to have detections and monitoring in place that tells me as soon as something malicious has occurred or somebody has gained some sort of foothold, I want to know about it right away. The sooner that I know about it, the sooner I can go ahead and block them, kick them out before they have a chance to do all the down level stuff that we've been alluding to and talking about earlier today. So it's really about the sooner you know about it, the sooner you can block it, the sooner you can kick them out, the less damage they're going to do. And that's really what we call cyber resilience. So as businesses, we want to get to a point where we are as cyber resilient as possible. Because here's let's just be straight about things. People are busy. People are distracted. You should not be so vulnerable that one particular end user internal, like a worker on your business, if they click on something, it should not bring your entire business down. You should be resilient enough as an organization to be able to withstand someone, because the stuff's going to happen. Someone's going to click on something. We're all distracted. We're all running 100 miles an hour. We're all kind of, doing lots of stuff. It's very easy to go ahead and click on something. It happens to the best of us. But again, having appropriate protections in place to go ahead and detect, block, and act as close to real time as possible is really going to help us as businesses across the world as we're going forward here. And that's really where businesses need to be. That's kind of like, at this point, for me, from my standpoint, it's really kind of a starting place for business today, and implementing some sort of monitoring system for your computers, for your network, and for your cloud applications is really critical.
How has AI, everybody's talking about AI, how's that changed the security landscape?
Well, it's accelerated things. So if you think about, again, if you think about what phishing emails were like a couple of years ago, it's kind of funny. Like, they'd have a lot of misspellings in it. They'd have logos would be off, graphics would be off, grammar is off. You'd kind of be looking at it like, oh, this is junk. Okay, kill it and go ahead and delete it, right? Well, with the advent of AI, we're using this on the protection side in order to be able to, really rapidly review, detect malicious attempts into my network. So we're using it on the defensive side. Well, it can also be used on the offensive side, and it is being used on the offensive side by hackers. So what they're doing now is they're able to use those same AI tools that we all use. What do we use AI for? If you've been using ChatGPT, well, I want to make my emails better. I want to go ahead and do some research. I want to do more kind of strategic planning. I want to go ahead and make communications easier, better, and so forth, right? Well, guess what? They're doing that too. And so they're going ahead and crafting more believable emails, uh, flawlessly delivered. Um, they're doing research on you and understanding what your likes are, what are your habits, and they're going ahead and including those in the emails themselves to make it more, uh, salacious or whatever for you to go ahead and click on, more enticing for you to click on, right? And so when you click on the stuff, that's where, like, having some sort of cyber training becomes really important, because you want to be able to very quickly decipher if something that is being sent to you is malicious or not. And going to some of the telltale signs, which we'll kind of get into, is if it has any sort of like urgency to it. If it has any sort of urgency to it, at that point, my recommendation to everybody here, stop. Go check. Call somebody. Do something offline. Don't just respond to the email. Don't just click on the thing. Kind of treat everything with a little bit of suspicion. And that's where kind of like a cyber training program becomes really important. But now we're seeing like, things are all happening faster and faster and becoming more and more believable. And they're tricking more and more people. Why do they do this? Well, because it works. People click on the stuff. And that's why you see such a large predominance of this sort of thing.
So you've given us a lot to kind of digest. Can we at least talk about some best practices that we should be doing to prevent issues for ourselves? I mean, I heard you say just now, Anything urgent is suspect. So even if it's real, don't respond to anything urgent, or at least be careful. But I'm kind of being joking there. But in all sincerity, what are some best practices to keep us safe?
Well, I think it starts with having what we call a security first mindset. So this is something where, leadership within an organization needs to decide that security is an important mindset that we as a culture within our organization need to adopt. And sometimes, leadership doesn't appreciate or understand the importance of it. And unfortunately, sometimes they have to have some sort of situation occur or compromise happen before they kind of get the memo. Uh, Ideally speaking, folks are starting to hear in the news about all the stuff that's happening, and hey, I don't want my business to be one of those trends or one of those statistics. So having kind of leadership buy-in, I think, is super important. Having some kind of think of it as almost like it really takes a village, and getting it in the creating a culture within the organization of like, it's not only blame, it can't don't blame, right? We're all on the same team. We're all trying to do the right thing. We're all doing our best. It's more about if we can train our teams to be able to recognize these sorts of things and then start to communicate internally, raise your hand. Hey, I think I got this, looks kind of suspicious to me. I didn't want to click on anything, but I wanted to talk to my IT team or I wanted to talk to a supervisor. Hey, you know, before I click on this, I just want to check. Hey, you know what? That is a malicious email. That's great. Hey, let's spread the word, folks. Hey, if you guys are seeing this email from this particular place, hey, don't click on it. Having that kind of uh, camaraderie internally and leading with a security first mindset becomes quite important. As you start to, kind of implement a security training system, there's a couple of things that are kind of help. So one is, again, culture of non-shame. Leadership buy-in, executive buy-in is super having executives lead from the front and going ahead and start doing the training, right? There's typically most security training programs will have some sort of, short video that you have to watch, maybe a little quiz you have to go through. Maybe it happens once a month or something. Having the executives lead that and show that they, hey, no, this is something that's important for the
Is
organization.
that what you mean when you say culture of no shame?
Well, again, it's like if someone clicks on something, hey, it's their fault. Hey, you clicked on that thing. It's like, for me, that's just not a super helpful response. It's really about these things are going to happen. It's more about, hey, let's train our folks, empower them to understand and recognize what one of these things looks like, and then share it and then go ahead and work together. Right. And at the end of the day, hey, one employee's, clicking on that particular thing should not be what brings down a network. We should have enough resilience and protections in place within that infrastructure to be able to withstand that kind of click, right? And that's really where we want to end up being. And companies really need to start, again, investing in basic fundamentals of making sure that they're patching their systems properly, making sure that they have security training, making sure they have some sort of real-time protection mechanism, making sure that they're scanning, they have appropriate virus protection, making sure that they're monitoring the dark web, like we talked about, having some real-time alerting, making sure that they're keeping up with, we all have probably use, different browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Edge, etc. How many of you guys have noticed? Probably a lot, I would bet. If you look at the top right corner of your browser window, there might be a little button that says, "Hey, update available." There are so many updates and so frequently happening to browsers that they actually, at this point, can be the first step into a compromise. If I'm using a browser that hasn't been patched and I go to a malicious site or I click on a bad piece of software, that is all that it takes in order for me to get my computer compromised. And most often, people kind of tend to ignore the updates, or a particular business might not have a centralized way of updating the systems on behalf of the users. So that's another area where we often help businesses by keeping all their stuff patched on a regular basis, because end users left to their own devices often don't do that. So other steps. We talked about multi-factor authentication. Effectively, at this point, think of MFA or multi-factor authentication as it should be turned on for basically everything. So especially for financial systems, critical applications, line of business applications that you use. If you are evaluating an application for use in your business and it does not offer two-factor authentication options, my recommendation to you is do not use that software. Do not purchase that application. That is not something that at this point, every system, every application should have some sort of two-factor authentication option. We want to be using strong passwords. What's a good password? Well, this guidance has changed over the years. Right now, the latest best practice, it used to be, hey, 8 characters and mix of, letters, numbers, and capitalization and special characters like a exclamation point and question mark and stuff. Well, you can crack that kind of password in about 30 minutes. So it doesn't take much time to go ahead and kind of crack that type of password and gain access. Best practices right now, you guys are probably gonna be like, oh my God, what is he talking about? 16 characters or longer. Oh, how am I gonna remember all these things? Well, you can use what's known as a passphrase. Or passphrase is something like, you can think of it almost like a sentence. Hey, I just went to a webinar today, and I can go ahead and use that can be my password. And then going ahead and putting in appropriate punctuation and so forth. And you can put in even spaces and so forth. But the main thing is like the longer the password, the more difficult it is to crack and the better the protections. If uh, you start thinking, well, how do I keep track of all these things? Well, that's what we use, what we know as what's called a password manager. Some of you guys may have heard of a password manager. This would be something like, might have seen like 1Password or LastPass or uh, there's a couple like other ones, a Bitward and so forth. And these are all basically, think of it as like kind of a password vault. And you keep all your passwords in that system, and it's going ahead and keeping track of them. And you can effectively want to keep all your passwords unique. Every system that you access, that password should be unique. And then when you say, oh, how am I going to keep track of all this? Well, that's what you'd use a password manager for. And that can go ahead and that can track, and it can work with your phone, from your phone. It can work from your laptop. It can work from your workstation. Keeps it all centrally managed, and is a very common use case that we see. That the other thing we see is like we see a lot of password reuse, where someone is using the same password in different accounts. Now, that's more convenient, but very insecure, because if I go ahead and compromise you and I gain access to that password, I'm going to go ahead and try that on different accounts, and I'm going to gain access to all those other accounts. So you're not really helping yourself. For more personal use, freezing your credit. If you go ahead and use Equifax or Experian or TransUnion, you can go ahead and freeze your credit. Hackers, once they gain access to your identity, often try and go ahead and take out a credit card in your name and so forth. But you can go ahead and freeze that. And so you're going to get a notification if someone is trying to steal your identity or try and open an account that without your knowledge. And that's a very useful thing to do. When you go ahead and submit your taxes, you can go ahead and set up what we call an IP PIN. And that's basically just you set it up on your IRS account. And I want to go ahead and submit my tax return. Now I have to submit with a code before it's going to be submitted. So that would have helped that CPA firm that I talked about earlier. But those are just some very common backing up your systems, having multiple different layers of backups in different mediums. I might back up to a local hard drive. I might back up to a cloud system, right? Having your data in multiple places, all super important, very helpful. When you think about, you get an email, when you look at it, be vigilant, be suspicious, think twice before you click on it. Is there some sort of urgency in there? So just very common best practices that, we as individuals, and it kind of rolls up to businesses as well. If we can start to kind of implement these kind of standard practices, our level of risk will drop pretty significantly.
Before we move on, Rob and Matt, we did have a question. How can organizations ensure MFA remains effective if a user's email is compromised?
Well, it's because there's a couple parts of this. So one is I mentioned monitoring, right? I can go ahead and we can put in a system that effectively is going to monitor your main cloud applications. So for example, I might use Office 365 for my email, or I might use Google. I might use Salesforce, or maybe I have a Box account or Dropbox, or maybe I have um, maybe like a website that I host in Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, right? These are all kind of cloud systems. Our security protections are monitoring those in real time. So if, for example, someone got their email compromised, we would detect that in real time and we would proactively go ahead and disable that account and prevent all the down level stuff that we talked about, all the business email compromise and monitoring of the account and the redirection of the invoices and all that stuff. None of that would occur because we would have gotten it at that moment in time. With regards to two-factor authentication, what we often see is that maybe folks set it up. There's some turnover in the environment. People come and go, depending on how diligent the team is that's monitoring the systems. They may or may not set up two-factor authentication for the new people that come in and so forth. And so there's what we call drift, where the settings become a bit more diffused. There's only a subsets of people that have the configuration set up. And so having kind of some kind of auditing mechanism, or reporting mechanism that we would provide would be something where we'd be able to notice, hey, so-and-so account for some reason doesn't have 2FA. We would be proactively notified of this sort of thing, and then we would make sure that it gets enabled. What we end up seeing now is like a lot of lawsuits are happening, and companies are getting denied their cyber insurance claims if they happen to have it, because they're saying on that cyber insurance form, approval form, hey, I enable two-factor authentication, check, right? Well, there's been so much ransomware and so much business email compromise and so forth that the cyber insurance companies are losing a lot of money. And so what they're doing is they're going ahead and making the process of being approved for a cyber insurance policy much more onerous. So they're now requesting much more information. They're going ahead and doing validation and verifications that you are actually doing the things that you are saying that you are doing. And if you are not, then they will go ahead and limit their liability by just denying the claim outright. And then some people are getting sued as a result. So if you look at all the ransomware attacks that happened last year, 20% of them have ended up in a lawsuit. And what happens with the 20% that are getting sued? Well, in order for you to defend yourself, you have to provide evidence that you have implemented these settings and that you are auditing this on a regular basis.
So Rob, this is a Vegas crowd, okay?
Yeah.
And so don't name the name, but tell the story about the dealership that got hacked, big dealership, and they had breached, but don't say the name. They can Google the name.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, lawsuits, right? So, like if you're an automotive dealership, you're considered actually a financial institution. And so you're actually technically a regulated industry. And so because you're a regulated industry, you have to have certain cyber protections in place. Many dealerships are underinvested in their cybersecurity. And so what often forces somebody to start making the appropriate improvements is that they need to get popped. So in the case of this auto dealership, they got compromised. They had 1,000 records, customer records get compromised, and they had a class action lawsuit against them. And this happened a little over a year ago. The ruling came down just about a month ago on this particular dealership. The fine, because they were supposed to have these protections in place but didn't, $6,000 per record. So that dealership, a single rooftop, single store, $6 billion fine. And they're most likely going to probably go out of business as a result. And we're seeing more and more lawsuits now that are impacting businesses like that because they haven't done the right things in order to level up their cyber protections.
And then I'm going to tell a quick story just about how you always mention it's a holistic approach, right? So there was a donut shop that had not gotten cybersecurity, and more importantly, like Rob says, layered approach, including a no shame culture, right? So people just were handed, for example, MFA, and they weren't explained how it works. So what happened? A criminal found the login on the dark web, right? This is a donut shop in Seattle, and started messaging an employee, and the employee's MFA kept going off, right? So you'd think, yeah, well, the MFA did its job. It blocked the hacker, right? Well, no, the hacker got on LinkedIn, found their phone number, called them up and said, "Hey, I'm with IT. Can you give me your MFA number?" And they did give it to them. Why? Because they didn't know, because they didn't have a holistic approach. And they did not have, because they didn't want at the time, manage endpoint detection, which means that person allowed the hacker complete access into the system. And then there was a lot of financial repercussions where there were false orders being placed. And then there were people that wanted orders up to $20,000 on the docks that were not being delivered because all the data got changed and was wrong, until they had to put in a lot of security, and but it was after a lot of costs. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, to Rob. It's not a fun story, but it's just good example of what you said, Rob. If you don't have a culture, in addition to all the security tools, you can have MFA, but if your employee doesn't know better, they could give that they can give that code away, and then unless you have other pieces in place, you have another problem.
Yeah, it just goes back. I mean, realistically, it's having strong fundamentals, basics in place, making sure your stuff is being updated and patched, making sure your team members are trained, making sure that they're able to recognize what a typical attack looks like, making sure that you have a culture that's thinking through and seeing things through a security lens, given just the level of impact that so many businesses are suffering from these days. So that's, it's the basics really. And if you do the basics and you do them, it's almost like, hey, if I'm going to go ahead and, I want to get myself in shape and I want to go to the gym on a regular basis, right? You're going to get healthier. I'm going to eat well. I'm going to sleep well. I'm going to go ahead and do my exercises and so forth. You're going to be healthier, right? Same kind of thing that happens with the business network and protecting that from a cyber attack. Making sure that you're doing the fundamentals, making sure that you're educating, making sure that you're spreading the word, creating this culture, doing the basics. And all of that is going to lead to a healthier outcome for your business and lowered overall risk.
I just did this part. Um, so, our next conversation is, you can look at this QR code. But I'm going to go to the next one because this is what I prefer. At the end of the day, we're talking about some broad topics, but really the reality is there's some nuanced pieces of security that matter for your business. So what we'll do is we'll provide you a scan, and that'll get you into a better place, because at least you'll know some of the pieces of what you don't know. And we'll do that for free. All you do is you book time with us. We'll sit down, we'll do a 30-minute meeting with you. Then you run some scans. The scans do not prevent anybody from working. No one has to go home, no vacation days. They just run in the background. They take, less than an hour. They come back to us. We compile the data and we show you how safe or unsafe your organization is with a follow-up meeting. Now, at that time, you could say a number of things, right? You could say, I don't want to do anything about it. You could say, I'll talk to my team. Sometimes people say, I want ITS to work with my team, which we do, or they'll say, I want to work with ITS. But at least we start you on the road of knowing what you don't know. And look, cybersecurity is a really tough topic. I'm very grateful to Kayla and staff that they asked us. We are the IT provider for the Vegas Chamber, so it was nice that they asked us. And I put incentives in place because it's such a hard topic to discuss. People just don't want to talk about it. So I said to Kayla prior that anybody that meets with us, book a meeting with us for over the next 2 weeks. You have to meet with us. We'll take every meeting that we sit in the next 2 weeks, and we'll put all the meeting people's names in a bowl, and then we'll pull it out, and then whoever gets picked will win a Yeti cooler, because everybody likes Yeti coolers. So that's our incentive. We want to help keep your business safe. We've been in Las Vegas for 24 years. And we just want to see cybercrime go down and business get the protection that they want, as well as not rely on insurance, which, as Rob has said, many times unfortunately comes short because they're really leaning into the fine print, and if you don't have it really set up right, we'll likely deny you. So I'm done selling. Does anybody have any questions? It's been quiet on the question and answer, Kayla. Is that standard? I'm not used to doing webinars so quiet.
It is sometimes.
Okay. All right. Well,
Any
how
final
long-
questions?
yeah, if we don't hear anything or see anything, I guess we will end.
Well, I just want to thank you both for leading today's session. Very insightful. I know the chamber really appreciates your time and knowledge and energy that you brought today. I want to send out a quick reminder to everybody here. Let me just pull up this calendar coming up here. November 13th, Employee Envy is going to present how to utilize grant money for staffing and upskilling. Jason from Employee Envy is going to join us for that. November 20th, we have AI Made Simple, tools to automate everyday tasks. Dan with Cloud Solutions Consulting is joining for that. And then December 10th, we have Building Your Dream Team, legal, cultural, and operations considerations for small businesses. Gina from Bon Jovi Law Firm is joining for that one. We hope to see you at some upcoming sessions. And thank you again, fellas. We really appreciate seeing
We
you.
hope you invite us back, Kayla.
I hope you'll be back.
No, we will.
Thanks, everybody. I hope if anybody has any feedback, please, we'd love to hear the feedback. And if there's any other topics that you think would be super relevant and super insightful, we're happy. We've done a lot of these kind of webinars and educational series, so we're happy to go ahead and do more of them. Just love to hear, people's feedback and what are some topics of interest.
And I'm going to go to some of the next chamber events. So if you see me there, please feel free to ask me in person. I would love to chat with you more and see if we can get a meeting together with us and Rob.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of the day,
Have a
everybody.
lovely day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye now.